and a tool we've seen successful with some other MPOs. So overall, I think the last slide here really is just, you know, that FTA, the FHWA, and the whole federal team are, you know, available for, I'm not sure at this moment what training opportunities there are. Obviously, COVID has sort of upended a lot of in-person trainings. I know there are some modules available that could be helpful for the TPO as it relates to performance-based planning. But there's also a lot of technical resources within the respective headquarters departments of both Federal Transit and Federal Highway that could work with, and you'll still have Kevin and myself working with the TPO on a more daily basis. So overall, I think we thought there was, you know, strong growth in certain areas, and then again, opportunities for improvement in others. And I know Kevin reserved time for questions at the end, if there are any. This was meant to be quick. We had a lot of slides. We didn't want to take up too much of everyone's time. So I'll stop jabbering and see if anyone has questions out there.
Does anyone have any questions or comments or observations on this you'd like to share with the rest of the committee?
All right. Well, if you're hearing none, I guess please jump in if you do. But if you want to reach out to myself, you know, kevin.jones@dot.gov. If you have any questions or if you think of any, I will say if you think of any on the way home, but I think we're all pretty much at home. So, but if you think of any later, please feel free to reach out, and I will work like a mad person to get you an answer to your question. That concludes our presentation. I do want to ask Christina, or give Christina the opportunity to discuss the public comments that came about during this process.
Thank you, Kevin. It was certainly a pleasure working with you and the whole federal team on the TMA certification review process. I did want to share the public input portion was done a little bit differently this time than it was in 2016. Originally, just like in the 2016 review, we, the staff, were asked to advertise a public meeting on the federal team's behalf according to the TPO's public participation plan. That meeting was advertised for the end of March, but with COVID concerns mounting, the federal team decided to cancel the in-person meeting and instead requested that staff solicit public input via a survey. So that survey was available electronically for 15 days and advertised to citizens, primarily using Facebook paid advertising, email lists that we have for citizens that have been involved in our work, and then also newspaper ads. Back in 2016, we had 19 people attend the in-person meeting, many of whom were TPO members or staff or folks that were regularly in contact with the TPO. And by comparison, the 2020 survey had 65 respondents, where more than 40% had never before interacted with the TPO. So we were happy to receive more input with this method than we would have normally. In response to a question on the survey, which asked how well the TPO is accomplishing federal goals for transportation planning related to 4 key areas. Those areas were encouraging and promoting the safe and efficient development, management, and operation of the Valley's transportation system, serving the mobility needs of people and freight, fostering economic growth and development, and considering resiliency needs while minimizing fuel consumption and air pollution. The responses were generally split between yes and I don't know or no. So as you might guess, the respondents who were most engaged with the TPO, either as a board member, a committee member, and that could be TTC, Bike Ped Committee, Public Participation Plan Committee, others that we've had in the past, those engaged individuals who responded to the survey said generally yes to those questions, whereas people who had been engaged through previous surveys, events, or not at all had been engaged with the TPO before had more of the I'm not sure, I don't know, or no responses. So the remaining survey questions asked a number of open-ended questions that relate to the key areas of interest that were reviewed by the federal team that Kevin spoke about. I feel like the input that was given by the citizens who provided actual comments was honest and generally reflects the challenging work of MPOs to communicate the presence of the MPO, the purpose, the products, and the achievements of the organization to a broad audience. So I hope that you'll take the time to read the citizens' thoughts if you haven't already. They were included in a summary that was distributed by Ms. Mullen last week. And it's both a citizen impact on just how the MPO does its planning and programming, as well as the input from the federal team, I think really serves as a guide for how we can improve the work that we do together over the next several years. So I look forward to working with all of you on improving our work and to follow up on the recommendations provided by the federal team.
Thank you, Christina. Anyone have any questions or comments for Christina? Okay, well, Kevin, I'd like to thank you and your team, and Christina, you, for the information that you shared with the TPO. And we look forward to continue to work with you all. If there's no questions then, or no comments, then we'll go to agenda item number 5, which is Title VI training with Rachel Rulin. So Rachel, it's all yours.
Thank you. I've shared my screen. Can you see that all right?
Yes.
Thank you. So you've probably seen a statement like this many, many times. RVTPO does not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, disability, sex, or age. As was mentioned, we did update our Title VI implementation plan in 2019, so it has that statement in it. The reason every organization, especially those who receive federal funding, will have that kind of a statement is because of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which established that it's illegal to discriminate on the basis of race, color, and national origin, and the related authorities which added disability, age, and sex to that list. So this is probably the most important thing, and this is your responsibilities as a board. You comply with Title VI. Are you hearing me okay? I just got a note that my internet connection is unstable. Is that all right? The sound quality okay?
Doing good now. It did cut off a few minutes ago. I meant a second or two ago.
Okay. Let me just shut my video off. That could help. All right. So this applies to everyone here as a voting or a non-voting member of the policy board or the technical committee. And your responsibility is fairly simple. Your responsibility is that you will not intentionally discriminate and that you will guard against unintentional discrimination. So how do you guard against unintentional discrimination? You have support from staff in that, so it's our responsibility to provide you with information, and your responsibility to consider that information in your decisions. For example, staff will do a high-level analysis of environmental justice, and you will consider that information in decisions. And I'll define environmental justice in a moment. We actively seek input from diverse groups, as you've heard a little bit about our public participation efforts, and your responsibility is to consider that input in your decisions. So environmental justice, the concept means that the benefits and the burdens of projects and programs are equitably distributed. So some examples of benefits of, for example, transportation projects would be access to jobs and services, safer travel. If you have a greenway nearby, that can increase your property values. A transportation project might result in shorter travel times for you. But the burdens of perhaps the same project or the same kinds of projects could include displacement from your home. So if there's going to be a highway now running through your home, or even a greenway, you might face increased injuries and fatalities as a result of it being more dangerous to cross your street. If the highway didn't go through your home, but near your home, it could actually decrease your property values. And you might have to live with more pollution and noise. So those are the burdens that can incur from, these are examples of some burdens that could incur from projects and examples of the benefits. And these should be equitably distributed. We should at least think about who's bearing the burdens and who's receiving the benefits. And does some mitigation need to be done so that people aren't experiencing these burdens or are being maybe there could be some compensation, for example, if you lose your home. So the kind of analysis that staff do is we just this high level overview of environmental justice, and it involves a lot of maps. So we look at which census tracts have a higher than average population of people in poverty, which census tracts have higher than average minority populations, and which have higher than average populations of people with limited English proficiency. And we put all those together into what was called an EJ, or Environmental Justice Index. This shows you the census tracts that have one or more of those three. And overlaid on that, these blue lines are the projects that were on the financially constrained list of projects in Vision 2040. This does not include the amendments. This was in the original adoption of Vision 2040. So then the next step is obviously any blue line that's going through or touching one of these shaded areas. We should look at that more carefully and make sure that the people who live in these areas are not incurring undue burdens, or that that's being mitigated to the best that we can do. And also look at the overall picture and make sure that we're not just building, for example, greenways in certain areas, and that these other areas may not be seeing the benefit of those, or other kinds of projects. So I'll describe a little bit more about what is in our Title VI implementation plan. Our public participation complies with Title VI. The very simplest one is obviously we don't ban anybody. Anyone can come to our meetings and engage in the opportunities we provide for public participation. We do provide accommodations upon request if they're reasonable. For example, we had a committee member who was vision impaired, and I would make sure to convert all of our materials, like the minutes and notes, into a text format that her text reader was compatible with her text reader, so that she could have access to those materials. We do have some standard practices that encourage to encourage participation by anybody. So for example, surveys now we always have online. And actually, I guess nowadays, providing a paper copy is our accessible practice. So we do both, but in the past, it used to be making it available online was the accessible option. Our meetings are accessible to transit. If we have a public meeting, it's in a place that's accessible to transit. The meeting room itself, this is back in the days when we used to actually have in-person meetings. The room itself, people with disabilities can get in and out. And we hold public input meetings at times of day that people who work during the day would be able to attend. We make a specific effort to recruit diverse applicants for our committees. So at least the pool of applicants, so when the choices are being made for committee membership, at least the pool of applicants is a diverse pool. And we have started asking demographic data in our surveys. So here's another example of some accommodations we made. We gave a presentation to a support group for the blind and the visually impaired, and that was definitely challenging to give a presentation with no visual aids, no PowerPoints, and we even did a survey. Obviously, we didn't pass around a paper survey. That's what these notes taped to the wall are. We kind of just did a informal poll of the group that was there at the time. Since we started collecting demographic information, the first survey that we asked that, we had one survey respondent who identified as Black or African American. This is a recent survey that we did where we had 8% of the survey respondents identified as Black or African American. Now, the population of the RVTPO is 14% Black or African American, so we do have room for improvement there. But we are obviously doing a lot better than previously. And our total numbers have gone up as well. It's not just that our percentages are going up because our total numbers are low or something, but our total numbers have been climbing dramatically as well. this is a zip code map of one of the same survey, showing where the survey, which zip codes the survey respondents identified. And this has also improved a lot. So as the survey continues, we take a look at what zip codes have responded, and we purchase additional advertising targeted toward those zip codes. And we've, this picture is a lot more filled in than it used to be. There's obviously still some blank spots, but it is doing a lot better than we used to. So another section in our Title VI implementation plan covers limited English proficiency. This, the requirement is that we use this 4-factor analysis, and the first factor is demography. So depending on the population of our region, the requirements are different. And because less than 5% of our region is, less than 5% of the people are both of limited English proficiency and all speak the same language, which would be Spanish, our requirements, we don't meet that threshold. So we have fairly simple requirements. The next factor is the frequency. So unfortunately, in my opinion, we've had 0 people with limited English proficiency who wanted to interact with us or access our materials or participate in public participation opportunities. So I would certainly like to have a higher frequency. I think that would be interesting. The next factor is the importance. So we look at is a project or program potentially going to affect a community that has a high proportion of limited English proficiency. And then the last factor we look at is what is resources, because this is not intended to be burdensome to our region, to our agency. We do have a translation service that we can use and a flashcard so that we could identify somebody's language if anyone ever approached us. So this is an area that's maybe not very relevant to us yet, but Roanoke is changing, and we would certainly like to reach out to everybody. Here's an area that we have never used and we hope we will never have to use, and that's how we would handle discrimination complaints. And this is also a required section. So we do have a discrimination complaint form online. We have never received any discrimination complaints, but we have an extremely long and detailed list of instructions of what to do if we do receive one. And that is all I have, so thank you. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions? Rachel, any comments? Okay, if not, then we'll go to our next agenda item. And Rachel, thank you for sharing that with us. That was a good report, and we appreciate that. Item number 6 is a comment period by your RVTPO policy board members and or public. So I don't think we have many people here from the public on this WebEx or whatever you want to call it. If there are, is anyone out there have anything they would like to say or any comments on what we've covered on the TPO today? Any members?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have a few comments, not necessarily on what we covered, but what we touched on in the beginning, if you don't mind. The Roanoke County would like to thank the TPO for its member support for Smart Scale Exit 2581 project at Peters Creek Road, as this will improve both safety and fluidity, especially when it comes to the Western Regional Industrial Authority that owns 100 acres in that area. And of course, that's jointly owned with Roanoke County, Roanoke City, and Salem. Secondly, I want to also thank the Allegheny Regional Commission for its sponsoring several of the 460 Smart Scale projects on behalf of the county and city. I'm sure that this will help in the consideration of those smart scale projects by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. And lastly, the 2-year biennium in the state of Virginia budget for the next 21 and 22 fiscal years anticipates a $2.7 billion shortfall, and will challenge many local governments, our schools, cities and towns, and counties. And I encourage each and every one of you to reach out to our 3 state senators in the area, Edwards, Newman, as well as Suderline, and also delegates Rasul, McNamara and Head during the special session and provide your comments to support or oppose not only the budget, but other items that are being considered. There's over 200 bills that they're trying to consider, and they're being challenged with time constraints as well as with virtual distancing, and also hearing from the public is a challenge. And about the best way to get to them is either text your representatives and or email them and be short, sweet, and to the point. Because having been on the VACO call every day for the last week and a half, it is a absolute interesting time, I will just say, in the special session that really was only supposed to address a few topics, but now it seems like it's just become an avalanche of topics. I would think many of these outside of the budget will be carried over into the January session, but the budget is critical. I'll give you one example. There's $95 million shortfall for schools. And if that money is not reinstated from some other part of the general fund, it's going to be unfortunate as we go into the second year of the biennium. So go on to the VACO as well as the General Assembly website and begin looking at some of these items. What scares me about all this is I certainly hope that these smart scale transportation projects will not be harmed in any way, but I think that it's going to be a difficult hill to climb over the next couple of years. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. North. Any other comments from anyone in the meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. King if he's heard anything based on what Mr. North said about the reduction in revenues over the next biennium, what he's heard about the impact on things such as smart scale funding. Because last year we had about $850 million, last round I should say, and I wonder if we're going to have that much or less as a result of the revenue shortfalls.
Wayne, I have not heard any specific projection. I think really what's anticipated is they're really waiting to see the results of the first quarter. So your July, August, September. I think we'll likely get some better indication of what that future is in the November, early December kind of timetable.
Okay.
And the one thing I would add that I'm certainly keeping on the radar screen is when we get to that November, late November, December kind of timetable, you know, I think everyone societally is worried about the overlap of the common flu with COVID and COVID's impact in the winter months. Does that increase? So I think those are that's the only other aggravating factor. I think we should get some pretty good indication of what's going on with revenues after that first quarter. As you know, there's been a lot of work done to direct those revenues to the specific purpose of transportation. And obviously the General Assembly during this session or the January session can unlock some of those things. But right now the stream of revenue is pretty directed to its intended purpose. So I think the end of the first quarter will be a big indicator. And then from there, I think the posture of whether it be conservatism or not could be influenced by what's going on in the winter months with the COVID and flu related overlap. So those are the factors that we're watching.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Okay, well, if there's no other comments, one last time, any comments from anybody? My battery on my computer is about shot now.
Yeah.
We better hurry up and get off. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for being at the meeting and for your comments and for your interest in the TPO. And I see we have Peter Velosin with us. When did you get on this board, Peter?
I joined, when I joined with Botetourt County. I was put on TTC with Cody.
Oh, okay. Yeah, another Botetourt County boy. Okay. Well, listen, everybody. Thank you. Wayne, do you have any comments you want to wrap up with?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, then we'll adjourn the meeting. And thank you all.
Thank you.
For being
Thank you.